Hey everyone, Ben here. Just with a little request that if you are enjoying the podcast, go to your local podcast app, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Amazon Prime, and make sure to give us some stars. 5 is great, but whatever you think it deserves, and that really helps to put us on the map. Also, feel free to go over to patreon.com/the Liminauts and pitch in with a monthly $5 donation if you want to support the project and help me get off my butt and interview other people. So without further ado, here's the podcast. Welcome to the Liminauts podcast. Interviews with individuals testing the liminal spaces between disciplines, perspectives, and practices, with a focus on Buddhism, spirituality, science, philosophy, and wellness from a left perspective. I'm your host, Ben Hawes. Dr. John Myerson is a psychotherapist, acupuncturist, martial arts teacher, Zen teacher, and practitioner of shamanic therapy. As one of the first presidents of the New England School of Acupuncture, or NESA, Dr. Myerson played a crucial role in legalizing and professionalizing the nascent acupuncture profession in the 1970s and 80s. I first met John as a student at NESA and became his patient and student. So in our conversation, I try to get him to pull back the curtain to show how all this stuff works and what the true meaning and nature of healing is. Hey, John, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ben.
Gotten past our technical difficulties here.
Yes, I did warn you, didn't I?
Yeah. So I was wondering, you are a shaman. Do you describe yourself as a shaman to people? Or what do
I
you
don't.
say? Okay, how do you describe what you do?
That's a really good question. I usually don't. Um, it all really depends on who comes to me and what they come to me for.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, most people come to me for shamanic type things. And so
Mm-hmm.
when they call me a shaman, I say, okay, I'm a shaman. But I think of myself as lots of different things. I think of myself mainly, I would say that I'm a person who travels in and out of the realms of existence. And, I do have a doctorate in psychology. I am a licensed acupuncturist. I've studied, shamanic work. I've done a lot of Zen training, and, it goes on and on like that. And so I basically just put them together, and depends on what the person needs. But I guess in modern, use of the word shaman, I guess that's who I am.
So how did you get to here with what you do now? And then we'll go on and we'll talk about what you do. But I think it makes more sense to kind of start with your journey because, now, with the internet and everything, there's millions of different people you can interact with who call themselves all sorts of things. And so,
Yes.
it's really hard to know what you're dealing with. And so I think, your personal biography gives a little bit of an idea of what it is that you do. So maybe you could just kind of tell me, because I've gotten bits and pieces of it, but I don't know if I've ever gotten the full enchilada.
We could be here for the next 3 hours if you want me to really do my journey.
I guess. Well, so you started with martial arts, right? In Boston's Chinatown.
So actually not in Chinatown. So I grew up in suburban Boston and
Newton.
I grew up in Newton, Mass, which is the next town out west from Boston. And I I was a big, strong kid, very athletic. I like contact, so I played football, lacrosse, anything like that. But I realized I was sort of out of control. I liked contact too much. Not that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to hurt anybody, but it was sort of borderline that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I discovered martial arts one day, watching some people. This is 1967, so there weren't very many people doing martial arts. There were a couple of people in the playground, and they were practicing martial arts. And I thought, that'd be a great idea to do to learn control. So I asked them where they learned, and there was only one school, of course, in Newton, I started. And this is Weiji-Ryu Okinawan Karate, which is about as hard a style as you can get, and I mean hard
Uh,
in muscle hardness, and definitely into power over. It's like
mm-hmm.
block a punch, give a punch, and you just overwhelm your opponent
Mm-hmm.
with your physical ability. So I studied that for a little bit, but it was hard because I played football in the fall, and then I would do martial arts in the winter, then do lacrosse in the spring, and then martial arts in the summer, and it got sort of hard to do that. So when I went to college, I had a choice of what I wanted to do. Was they were expecting me to play football, and I went to Harvard. My father went to Harvard, and he was an All-American football player there in 1931. And so I went out for 2 days and realized this is not what I wanted to do anymore. I had
Mm-hmm.
enough of football. We had won two Class A Division One state championships previous 2 years, and I was basically, I thought maybe it'd be different in college, but it was basically the same stuff, just a little more athletic level. And it was a big deal for me to say no. I wanted to do something else, but I have to hand it to my father. He supported me in that. And so I started joining a club, a martial arts club in college, the Harvard Kung Fu Club, and we did Shaolin Kung Fu, which is basic Chinese martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar to the Japanese Okinawan stuff, but it's more acrobatic. So for me, it was a lot harder because I'm a big person and I don't do acrobatics too well. But I stayed in the club. I became the head teacher of the club by my senior year. And so probably when I was a sophomore, yeah, so 1972, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
I was, I liked Kung Fu, but I realized that really wasn't my thing either. But I did it because I like to spar, and that was fun for me. And I was walking back from one of the buildings where I studied at Divinity Avenue in Cambridge, and I passed the Cambridge Ringe High School, Cambridge Ringe Technical High School, and in the playground there was this Chinese guy doing weird motions in the air, very slowly, very even. I really had no idea what he was doing, so I stopped and
Mm-hmm.
watched. And then afterwards, I talked to him. He was a grad student at MIT and studying engineering. What else? And he was doing Tai Chi. And he actually came from a very famous Tai Chi teacher in Taiwan. And so I asked him if I could start learning with him. And he said, sure. So that was my introduction to internal martial arts,
Mm-hmm.
which became my specialty. And also in the same year, in 72, I was also the year of the dragon. And I am a dragon. I was born in
Mm-hmm.
the year of the dragon. And I had discovered about Zen Buddhism. Some roommates of mine recommended a couple of books, especially Three Pillars of Zen by Philip Kapleau.
Mm-hmm.
And the only Zen master, and he was in Rochester, New York, and he was the only Zen master that I knew of on the East Coast in 1972. So he had these weekends in the winter of 72 that you could go for a day and then check it out. And while we did, and I personally didn't like Kapleau himself. He was like a typical, convert. He was heavily into the rules and the wearing of the robes, and he basically like brought Japan over to Rochester.
Right.
And yeah. And so I love the Zen part though.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically I either sat on my own or there are a couple of Zen groups. One of his groups was in Cambridge, and there was another group that I sat with. And eventually I met a good friend of mine, Paul Gallagher, and who's a Taoist master and a Tai Chi master. And I never studied Tai Chi with him. I stayed with my friend whose name was Chen because I liked the form better. But that was my introduction to Taoism and Taoist meditation, which was similar to Zen, but not exactly the same. And in 1979, 79, I think it was, yeah, I met my Zen master, whose name was Maureen Stewart Roshi, and she was in Cambridge, Mass. So it was great. We did Japanese Rinzai Zen. And I went through the whole, Zen process with her. And I mean, that's a story unto itself. Each one of these could be,
yeah, for sure,
a week-long story.
And what was her lineage?
Japanese Rinzai Zen by Soen Nakagawa Roshi.
Soen Nakagawa.
No, I'm sorry. Nakagawa Soen Roshi. Got that name wrong. Yeah, sorry. And who was the teacher of Aido Roshi in New York. And she had an interesting story, in that she studied with Soen Roshi a lot, and also Aido Roshi in New York. And in a private ceremony one day, he gave her Dharma transmission, which, as you know, means that she is now a Roshi herself and can go teach on her own. And but he never announced it. And he was an odd kind of guy, and no one had ever given an American woman, or Japanese woman for that matter, the title of Roshi. And so I think he just was embarrassed to do it.
Uh-huh.
So there she was, kind of in limbo, and her students, we didn't care. What do we care? She was our teacher, and that's all that mattered. And eventually she got recognition, and the longer I stayed with her, I realized what the whole koan thing was about. It was basically about opening space and entering it together and being there and transmitting information mind to mind, thus the mind-to-mind transmission.
Mm-hmm.
And because in Rinzai Zen you solve these koans, the riddles, which have no answers, of course. Anyway, so I went through that, and after a while, I liked the place a lot because it was very formal, but not formal. So we didn't wear any robes. So you didn't have to wear robes. I'd wear a T-shirt and gi pants. There was, we bowed and everything, but there was none of the formality that a lot of Zen has. But as she got more and more into being the Roshi, it became more and more, shall we say, formal, and that kind of thing. And after a while, when she was on trips, she would let me run the Zendo for certain sittings, and I was given permission to teach. I had my own Zendo out in Framingham, Massachusetts, and in one Dokusan session in I think it was '85, she gave me Dharma transmission, and she said, this is what it is, and by the way, I would like you to become a priest. And I went, I started to feel like I was being sort of pushed into being the next heir. And I don't do well in that situation. I like to be what I call radical freedom. I like to get lots of things, go lots of places, and then just move on and meld into something else. So, I kept doing my thing. I kept teaching my group in Framingham. I had to stop going to the Zendo as much as I did before because I had 3 kids under 5 years old and a practice to run. And she ended up with liver cancer and died in 1990. so I was never, it was never announced that I had gotten Dharma transmission either. So I was sort of stuck in limbo, which at the time didn't bother me because I really didn't want to go that route anyway. And by a lot of strange circumstances, I'll just tell you one sort of quick story. How I met my shamanic teacher, and very weird circumstances. So I had a business partner, and one of her students who lived in Providence was a psychiatrist, and one of his patients met my partner, Dennis, and then Dennis met the psychiatrist, and so he told her all about this shamanic teacher. And he had a few sessions with the teacher, and he came back and he kept telling me what a wonderful thing it was that I really needed to meet this lady. And I'm going, yeah, whatever. I got my stuff. I don't really need to be a shaman, and I wasn't interested in that. But I kept having these weird dreams. And in these dreams, this little old lady, but she wasn't that old, let's say 50s maybe. And this is 87, I think. And she kept just beckoning me with her finger, like, come here, and then would disappear. And so finally, to shut Dennis up, I went with him to Providence to meet his teacher. And I walked in the thing, and you can figure out what happened. I walked in, and the teacher was her, the lady who was beckoning at me. So that's how I met my teacher. And the first thing she did was she looked at me and she said, "Oh my God, you are for real. Look at all that violence. I had never met anyone like you." I'm thinking, this lady's nuts. But as she smiled at me and looked at me, all of a sudden my world just went and changed. And so I became her student. And her apprentice, after 5 years, I'm writing a book on all this, by the way, so hopefully someday everybody can read this. But anyway, so in 5 years, she said, enough was enough, and you're out on your own. And that was good because she was the opposite of me. She was from Africa, but she was a white person. She was adopted by the village shaman at age 3 and was trained by him. And she was also into Mother Mary. So she was really into the divine feminine. And I was the warrior. My job was to protect the village and attack and defend anything that came at it. In other words, evil spirits.
Like your archetype.
And that's me.
Yeah.
And in shamanic work, especially today, you find everybody who wants to be something. And so they decide that they're something. But in real shamanic work, it chooses you. And I didn't choose any of this. It literally chose me. And so that was my thing. I cleared dark stuff. I would separate people from things. Had some, pretty serious stuff in the dark realms. And that was all good, but I was starting to get to think that, that's not where I wanted to go either. My real purpose in this life was to transition from a warrior into a healer. And so I needed to get to the light. And so I started working on that in a number of different ways. Since we don't have all day, I won't go into all that, but that's sort of where I am today, is that I've transitioned into, I'm still a warrior. I can still do all this stuff in the dark realms, but I transitioned to being into a light realm. And, I don't really do traditional psychology, but I used acupuncture a lot. My doctoral dissertation was the use of acupuncture to induce non-ordinary states of consciousness. And I never used psychedelics or any of that kind of stuff.
Hey.
Yes?
Hey, I lost you.
You lost me?
Yeah, am I still there with you on
Yeah,
on the computer?
it's still going.
Huh. There's no audio. That's strange.
See, as soon as I start talking about energy, it goes bye-bye.
Right.
I'm serious. This is what I do.
Hey, everyone. Ben here. We were eventually able to wrangle John's immense shamanic energy down to the available bandwidth of digital communication and podcasting. So here's the rest of the interview. Okay, so we are talking about your sort of journey into shamanism, but during this whole time, you were also getting professional degrees. So you helped start the New England School of Acupuncture in the mid 70s. That's right?
So after college, this is before grad school and everything, I was going to medical school. And so I applied to medical school. I got into medical school, and then I didn't know whether I really wanted to go to medical school. So I decided to work as an orderly in the OR and ER of Newton Wellesley Hospital, which is now part of Brigham and Women's. No, it's now part of Mass General Brigham's. And so, as an orderly, I got to see surgeries. At that point, I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. And I worked there for a year, and I realized that, I didn't like hospitals. I didn't want to be in a hospital. I didn't like the hierarchy. I wasn't sure what they were doing. I was very interested in finding some acupuncture, but there was no acupuncture schools. And by chance, I met Dr. So, who was an acupuncturist that was brought here from Hong Kong. And he and I hit it off, and he wanted to start a school. So with a few other guys, we started a school in 1975, the first school in the country called New England School of Acupuncture. And I went on to, at age 24, we went on to start this school, which I eventually became the president of. And so, I had a lot of training in Chinese medicine for sure. I would say that's a big foundation of my life. Taoism, Zen, and Chinese medicine, which to me, Chinese medicine is Taoism. So,
and can you tell me a little bit about how that led you to your psychology degree and becoming a psychotherapist as well?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I was practicing as an acupuncturist, and I noticed that when certain people, when they entered a mild trance state, got much better results than people who didn't. So I got really interested in the trance states and doing things like that. And then I read this book called, what was it called? It was by Charles Tart, called not psychosynthesis. I'll think of the name in a minute. Anyway,
no worries.
It basically showed how certain religions and certain things like shamanism, Taoism, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever, were transpersonal psychologies. That's the book, Transpersonal Psychology. And now they're called energetic psychology, I think, something like that. And basically, that was an eye-opener for me because I realized what I've been doing all along was studying psychology. And so I decided to get a doctorate in psychology, which I could have done at Harvard, but they weren't going to let me do what I wanted to do. So I found this place called the Union Institute, which is still there. It was the first university without walls that was accredited. And it was great. I loved the program. It was hard work because you have to devise your own program yourself, carry it through. You have a committee, just like a regular doctoral program. And as I said, that was my doctoral dissertation, was using acupuncture to induce non-ordinary states. So basically, I did the same work that's being done now with psychedelics, except I didn't use any drugs because, of course, they weren't permitted. Although when I started, they were, but I wasn't interested in the drugs because to me, excuse me, to me with drugs, you might get high, but you always come down again. And
Mm-hmm.
that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Um, so, yeah, so I used anything I could do to get people into those states. Chanting, meditation, dancing, acupuncture, drumming, all of the above. And that's how I started with it.
So, what are the kinds of things that you work on? Because, most people have an idea, okay, you go to acupuncture and, you might be working on someone's, you're working on, their chi, but, you're working on their health issues. Maybe you're working on mood issues, you're working on pain, you're working on inflammation, you're working on digestion. You go to a psychotherapist, you're going to talk about your issues. You're going to be, again, working on mood stuff, trauma. How would you describe the work that you do that, the shamanic work? What is it that's, you know, different from those working in those realms?
Well, I'd say, for me, um, uh, nowadays is quite different. But in the beginning, I would say I started doing psychology with people, therapy, and I would add acupuncture to it, and or herbs. And then we would do drumming sessions. Um, and the idea was to get them into a different realm, a different state of mind. And when they go into those other states, it affects their emotional, spiritual, psycho-spiritual being. And I realized that for me, in the body, mind, spirit continuum, that healing comes from, for me anyway, the psycho-spiritual realm. And then it goes to the mind realm, then it goes to the body. And it doesn't really matter where you start in your healing process. Um, and originally I started on the physical, and then I would do physical and emotional, and then I would add the psychospiritual. And once I got to psychospiritual, I pretty much stopped the rest of it.
Mm.
That's what works for me. And today, I only see people like yourself. I train a lot of people. I work with people who are working in the field of shamanic healing or acupuncture or any kind of alternative healing that gets you out of your body, out of your conscious body, into the realms. And so I train people. I have training groups, and that's the kind of patient that I'll get. Is that someone who's willing to work with me in that sort of way? So
Um, since there's, so there's a wide world of stuff out there, and uh, what do you think the role of skepticism is when it comes to working with people who are working with, shamanic stuff? Because how would you go about finding somebody that you think is the real deal? Like, how do what you're looking for? Or
yeah, I think it has to do
because,
with word of mouth. I do no advertising. I have, I don't have a website. I'm not on Facebook. I don't do any media, social media, any of that kind of stuff. People find me because they find me.
mm-hmm.
They find me because of the 3 books I've written, or mostly word of mouth. And I think that that's the way it should be. I think that I don't mean to put anybody down, but
Mm-hmm.
in the new age movement, there's a lot of, shall we say, garbage out there.
Mm-hmm.
And you take a course, and you do 500 hours, and you become a yoga master. Or you do however many hours, and you become a shaman. And there's a number of those organizations out there.
Especially now with the popularity of ayahuasca.
Oh, no question, no question. And I go, okay, whatever, it's fine. To me, they're not trained. They think they are, but they're basically like one-trick ponies who can try to fit everybody into one little trick, and they don't really have the experience or the training. I've spent a long time. I've been in practice for 47 years now, and in each realm that I did, I was trained basically professionally as best I possibly could at the time, and I practice it. I still, I do my meditation every day. I sit for 2 to 4 hours every day, um, and it's basically my life, that work. And people have a misconception with shamans, is they feel that shamans do the work while you sit there and do whatever, which is not true. To me, I help people do the work. I explain to them what we want to do, how we're going to do. I'm there with them. I can be in their dreams. I can be in their head. I can understand where they are, because most likely I've been there too. And I help them along as they do the work. And as they do the work, they learn and they grow. And their minds learn and expand and change. So it's not a short kind of thing. And I don't, I won't take a journey for you. I won't, do whatever. And I don't do a whole lot of acupuncture or anything anymore because I realized I don't need to. I can get the same results just by sitting with you. As you know me. My energy is very strong, and I do a lot of healing remotely. I have people all over the world, especially all over this country, and I usually work on the phone with them. Sometimes we do Zoom. I have a number of people who I've never seen in person, and I don't have to, because I'm lucky to be able to do the work that I do.
If somebody wants to, investigate these realms that you work in, how would you suggest they start?
Well, I think there's all kinds of entrance ways, to tell you the truth. I think you can use anything from marathon running to painting to dance to there's a lot of drumming circles out there. I recommend people meditate because that's my thing, is like a professional meditator. But, I have people who are amazing healers and they don't meditate, so you don't need to do that. You can use anything to get into another place. You just have to be able to train your mind to do that, and that's the key.
You call your practice. You call your practice calling the souls, or at least that's a big part of what you do.
That's what I used to do. It's my first website was called callingthesouls.com, and because that's what my teacher called the work that we did, was calling the souls. And I'm good at that. I can call lots of different souls, lots of different things. It's not necessarily ancestor. It's a lot of other things come to me, and who knows whether it's true or not that they come to me? I don't know, but the information I get is worthwhile, and it works. It's kind of like the old Taoist monks who go out to the mountains and meet some mythical Taoist who's no one ever seen before, and get all the secrets of the universe, and they come back and they teach. And mine's sort of the same way. That's how I get my information. Is it comes to me.
Would you say, is it visual? Is it, how would you describe your kind of phenomenological experience of this stuff?
It's everything. It's physical. It's I see, I hear, I feel. I get knowings. Trees will speak to me. Animals will speak to me. People will open a door that they don't even realize they opened. So I use anything I can get, really, but probably mostly it comes through meditative kind of things.
Sounds very psychedelic. So do you think that this modern resurgence of psychedelic medicine, in a ritual context, not in a medical context, less recreational a focus, but really looking at working with uh, all sorts of things that can come up that can be perceived when you're on these different substances or plant spirits, as a lot of them are known to people. Um, do you see this as a way for people to access the same stuff that you're working with, or do you think that that's a different thing?
No, I think it's the same thing, and I applaud it. I think it's great. However, once you get high, you come down. So
Hmm.
I think for a lot of people, especially in the beginning, it's great because they're able to experience that realm safely, which is a key in my opinion. Because in the 60s, I saw lots of people burning themselves out.
Hmm.
But safely, I think it's great for healing. But I think it's limited in that. It's not your. If you want to keep going with this, you have to train your own mind. You can't keep using psychedelics, and that's what Ram Dass found out. That's why he and Timothy Leary split up.
Hmm.
Leary wanted to go on with the psychedelics, and Ram Dass realized that it was a dead end. And that's when he went off to India and found Neem Karoli Baba. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
uh, that's 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 my opinion on that. Medically speaking, and I think it's great. I think recreationally, it's not. And I don't mean you have to be in a medical setting. I think that there are a number of people who can professionally learn how to administrate it well, and so that's fine too. But I think personally that's only going to get you so far.
Hmm. Um, I think one of the questions I have for you is kind of, a lot of people are doing mindfulness practices now, but it basically, mindfulness practice now is promoted as a sort of cure all, to help your anxiety, to help you be more productive at work. In fact, you can, if you're working in an Amazon factory, you can go into a little meditation booth and, have 5 minutes of Zen. What do you think is the difference between what people are thinking of now as mindfulness training and, the meditation that you think is necessary in order to really do the work that you do?
I think it's great. I think it helps people. I think anything that helps people is great. I think it's on a very superficial level, however. I think, my Zen training was, they had an intensive meditation session mostly every month, which was 5 to 7 days, 14 to 18 hours a day of meditation. Um, as I usually sit 3 to 4 hours a day. And so, it's just different, it's just a different depth. And to me, I'm a mystic.
Mm.
I'm not into organized religion at all. I have no problem with anybody who wants to be an organized religion, but for me personally, it boxes me in, and I don't like being boxed in. And so, I develop with my people that I work with different ways of doing all these things, but it has to be for me in depth. In other words, as a mystic, I want direct experience of the one. I'm not interested in what anybody said, God said, or the one said, or the Tao, or whatever you want to call it. I don't care. The books are fun to read, but they don't mean anything to me. I want to hear it myself. I want direct experience all the time with the one, and which makes me some kind of fanatic. And but that's where I'm at.
Uh, so do you think that, this connection with the spirit, or connection with, emptiness or oneness, um, how do you feel that, you mentioned God. So uh, what's your experience of God or spirit, say beyond? Because a lot of people are drawn to Buddhist meditation because it's non-theological, right? There's no real God talk, and you can practice Buddhist meditation as an atheist, and you can practice it, in conjunction with a religious faith. So, what is your experience of spirit or God, and how would you say that is a part of your practice?
Well, I would say that it's a matter of semantics, because I believe when you get Dharma transmission or have Satori or enlightenment experiences in Zen, it's the same thing as what I'm talking about, as getting a glimpse of the one.
Hmm.
I don't see any difference. I have not seen a difference. And so I think they're all aiming at the same place. It just depends on how you want to get there. And then the lens through you want to look at it going backwards. And in other words, how you want to express it. Um, so, yeah. Yeah. I'm not saying my way of getting to that place is the way to go. I'm just saying it's a way. What I help people do is find their way, not my way, your way. And that's what we all work on.
I have one question that comes to mind, just as being both a Buddhist practitioner and teacher, somebody who has been sanctioned as a teacher, even if informally, right? But as somebody who is well steeped in Buddhism, how does that work with your warrior martial arts training? Uh, Another one of people I talked to, Kurt Steinmetz, who is a Zen master in the Sangha that I sit with. We had a discussion about what he feels is the misperception that Buddhism is a nonviolent religion. We talked about just historical cases of when monks engaged in war for self-defense. And so, what is your feeling about how violence or nonviolence, fighting, physical confrontation, how that fits in with Zen for you, or with Buddhism, or
Well, people are violent, and so whether they're Buddhist or not Buddhist, they still can be violent. But for me, martial arts has always been a way. It's always been one of the ways for me to experience the one. And I've grown from, a teenager and a 20-year-old who, wanted to beat anybody I possibly could beat, into using it as a way to enlightenment, a way to experience the one. And I use weapons. I'm a weapons master, which makes it even sillier when you think about it. But I use swords, spears, whatever. And I have people who I've trained in this, and they all came to me through martial arts. Some of them have 15 to 40 years of experience. I've been doing it for, let me see, exactly 56 years, 57 years. And I train intensively. But I do a lot of the internal martial arts, which are Taiji, Bakwa, and Xingyi. And I've invented my own style with the sword. And if you would come and watch us someday, you would see that we don't wear armor anymore, and we're not trying to hit each other. We use practice swords, but they're made out of steel. So they're dangerous, but they're not sharpened. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of it is it's like a dance, is to meld with the other person. So what I do when we spar is I bring them to another state of reality. And we see if we can stay there, get there, and see how the energy moves around us as we connect. So we do that every Saturday morning.
Do you feel, though, in terms of just getting out of the idea of martial arts as a practice, but getting into, I mean, the world is, I mean, it's always to greater or lesser extent been a violent place, but it certainly seems like things are intensifying, if
Right.
you're in the United States, and the amount of violence is increasing, and larger and larger numbers of people who want to engage in violence, civil war, or death threats against public people, just kind of soaring. So um, I mean, how do you feel, for people who are Buddhists or meditation practitioners, um, how do you feel that works with you in terms of, or I guess I should say, how does the expression of violence or even killing, um, as a Buddhist, what is your, is that something that you can't do and you should leave to others, or what is your feeling about Buddhist practices? You take precepts, you're not supposed to kill, so um, it always seems like it's in conflict, but
Well,
there's a long
first of
tradition of
all,
Buddhist martial arts.
I would say, first of all, that I'm not a Buddhist.
Hmm.
I'm not an ist. I'm a whatever
Okay.
I am.
Hmm.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is just what you said, is that Buddhism has been long involved in lots of different martial arts, for sure. And I you know, if you're going to live in this world, this physical reality, you're going to kill. Every time you eat, you kill something. Every time you breathe in the air, you kill something.
Mm.
I don't know about you, but have you ever been to a farm and watched someone pull a carrot out of the ground? The carrot screams. And I can hear that scream. I can feel that scream. And so people tell me that they're vegetarians because they don't want to kill. To me, it's bullshit.
Mm.
Just that they don't have the ability to hear or feel what the plant is feeling. And to say that they are lesser, higher beings than mammals, I think is baloney. It's all the same. It's all life force. And unfortunately, that's the way it is in this realm. If you're going to feed yourself, you're going to kill. So I don't believe that Buddhist thing about don't kill. Yeah, it sounds good, but whatever. Plenty of Buddhists I know eat too, so we're all killing something, right?
Mm.
Um, has Buddhism been a big influence on me? Oh, absolutely, no question about it. Um, yeah, that's where I first learned how to travel the realms. Um, I didn't realize that's what it was until I did the shamanic work, and I realized, oh, it's the same thing. It's just shamanism is like applied Zen, if you ask me.
Mm.
And I don't know why I like swords and spears and all that kind of stuff. I know different past lives that I've experienced. I, um, always been a warrior. Um, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, to tell you the truth, except that I think it's not quite correct to. I mean, as Buddhists, you can be a pacifist, but you can be a pacifist being anything,
Hmm.
any religion, if you want to be. But Japanese samurai were absolutely not pacifists, or
Hmm.
Korean for that matter, or any of the other Buddhist countries. So there you go.
Okay. Well, if you want, you've written a few books. If people want to find those books, what are they still
Just look.
available?
Oh yeah, look up. There's three of them. Look up
Okay.
my name on Amazon. They're all available.
What are their
Um, I,
names? The titles?
um, yeah, the first one is the first one is Riding the Spirit Wind. The second one is Voices from the Other Side of the Couch, and the third one is death grip on the pummel.
On the pummel.
And pummel, yes, like on a horse, a Western saddle on the pummel. And yeah.
And you've got another one that you're working on right now.
I am. I don't know when it'll be done. It's about 2.5 years into it so far, plus different things that are going on. So yeah, and the new one is about my journey, just about what we talked about, but in much greater detail. My journey from, the dark trip into the light trip.
Fantastic.
It is fantastic. It's fun. And you've known me for a long time. You've seen changes in me too. So, Yep. I don't eat people alive anymore.
I guess the only other thing I would ask you about, and we can cut this, but do you want to say anything about Baba? Do you want to say anything about Neem Karoli Baba and your experiences, your recent experiences, having a contact and feeling the presence of Ram Dass's teacher?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. 1972, that famous year for me, Ram Dass's book, Remember, Be Here Now, came out. And I remember reading it, and I remember saying, oh, wow, isn't that cool, huh? And I had a choice at that point in time whether to do Zen or to go find Ram Dass and go to India. And it's just a coincidence that Ram Dass grew up in Newton, around the corner from me. Literally around the corner. And except he's 20 years older than me, but so I didn't know him. But anyway,
and at the time too, Ram Dass thought he was going to be in Japan with Alan Watts, and then ended up feeling like, oh, that's not the place for me, and ended up going to India. So, kind of,
going to India, and he, he was into guru, and I wasn't into any of that stuff. Seemed to be too complex and too. I don't know what. I don't like the idea of a guru at all. Never have. And so I did the Zen trip, just like I told you. But so a little while ago, I was bored one night, and my wife was upstairs doing something, and I had 4 dogs in my lap because we have 4 dogs, and I was searching through Amazon Prime for a documentary to watch because I was tired of reading, and I don't usually watch TV, but if I do, I look at these documentaries, like I've seen them on Iyengar or Thich Nhat Hanh or even Ram Dass, And actually, the first part of this was, how at Amazon, when if you buy books from Amazon, they send you books they recommend. So a few months before I was doing Amazon Prime, they sent me one, and it was Ram Dass's Be Love Now. And I said, first of all, it's kind of weird. Why did they send me a book by Ram Dass? I haven't read one of his books in 20 or 30 years. And then I said, Be Love Now? I thought it was Be Here Now. So I look at it, and sure enough, there was a book named Be Love Now. So I said, oh, let me look at this. So I got it, and I read it, and it's all about him and his teacher. We'll call him Baba. It's easier than saying his name all the time.
Right.
And so it was, it was cool. It's the usual stories, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool, and that was it. And then a few months later, I was doing this thing, surfing through Prime Video, and this one jumped out at me, and it was by some guy. It was a homemade video, which was terrible, by the way. But, it was a typical story, dropped out of college, met Ram Dass, did some acid, went off to India, came back, couldn't find himself, went to college, got a degree, got married, got divorced, and retired, and then decided, well, maybe it's time to go back to India, see if he can find himself again. It's like sort of typical, right?
Right.
And so I'm watching this and I'm going, what the hell am I watching this for? But every now and then there'd be a clip of Bubba, and I had never seen Bubba before. I'd seen pictures of him, but never a video of him. And I'm going, oh, isn't this interesting? And had some stuff from Ram Dass in it too. And I think Ram Dass was brilliant, absolutely brilliant man. His lectures were so Harvard, it's just amazing. Funny, witty, and brilliant. And anyway, so I'm watching it, and finally, the guy at the end, he decides now that it's time to go back to India. But Baba had died in 1973. Okay,
so he got there too late.
He got there too late. So he goes, and there's 3 ashrams that were associated with him, and he visits, the biggest one, and he's sitting there talking to the head dude, and I don't know what they call him, priest or whatever he was, and so the camera's, he's looking right at this guy's face, and you can hear from behind the camera, the guy goes, well, it's really too bad. I never got to meet Baba. He died before I got here. And the guy looks at him right at the camera. He's obviously standing right behind the camera. And it's like he's looking at you or looking at me.
Right.
And he goes, he's always here. All you have to do is call him. And in that moment, I called him. And I'm good at calling souls. And he was here, boy. I tell you, all of a sudden, me and Baba were one. And it was the most amazing experience I have ever had in any of the work I've ever done. And the man, is real. All the stories about him, as far as I can see, are real. And he is love. It's it. It's all he is. He's all love. And so I now have a guru.
So you're now Maharaji's student, just like Ram Dass was, but he's just not a body anymore.
I don't pay attention. He doesn't give me rules like he did Ram Dass. It's all about being in the light, being with the light, and being bhakti yoga service, which is what I've been doing my whole life anyway. So
wonderful.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. I must admit, I love the journey. I love the journey I'm on. I love the journey I've been on. It's been very difficult many times, and it's been amazingly rewarding many times. And I'm 71 now, and it's just I hope it keeps on going because it keeps unfolding in brilliant ways.
Well, I hope it does too, John. Another 20 years, if it's not too much for you, because I've still got a lot to learn. So thanks for all your hard work.
No problem.
One of these days I'll get it.
You'll get it. Either that or I'm going to beat it into you. We'll go the violent path, right?
More suffering necessary.
That's it. Oh my God. No more suffering, please.
Well, thank you for talking to me, John.
Oh, my pleasure. And anything else, just let me know. We can fill in the blanks if you come up with other questions.
Sure. We might do a sequel once your book comes out.
I love that. That'd be great.
Thanks for listening. You can find plugs and links in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this, you can feel free to contribute to the Patreon at patreon.com/theliminauts. Till next time.